The dust storms of Drakenveld never stopped. They came in waves, red and angry, battering the reinforced walls of Terran Colony 7 Alpha like the planet itself wanted the humans gone. Inside the medical bay, a woman screamed one last time before falling silent forever. The infant in Dr. Chen's hands wailed, tiny fists punching at the cold air. The doctor looked down at the baby boy, then at the young mother's still face. 23 years old, dead from complications that would have been nothing back on Earth. But this wasn't Earth. This was the edge of human space, where supplies came twice a year if they were lucky. "Another mouth we can't feed," muttered Councilman Garrett from the doorway. He didn't even look at the baby. His eyes were fixed on his datapad, scrolling to the colony's diminishing food reserves. Dr. Chen wrapped the infant in a thin thermal blanket. "He's healthy. Strong lungs. Strong lungs need food. Food we don't have." Garrett finally looked up, his face hard as the planet's rust-colored rocks. "The mother had no family here, no one to claim him. So we raise him together. The colony is dying." Garrett's voice cut like glass. "We lost another hydroponic bay last week. The water recyclers are failing. We have 63 adults and 12 children to keep alive. We can't add another." The doctor's hands tightened around the baby. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious. The council voted an hour ago. 5-2. Garrett's expression didn't change. "We leave him outside the walls before nightfall. It's kinder than watching him starve slowly." Dr. Chen wanted to argue, to fight, to scream. But she knew the numbers as well as anyone. 3 people had already died from malnutrition this month. The colony's original population of 200 had dwindled to 75 in just 4 years. Drakenveld was killing them slowly, and hard choices had become routine. She held the baby for another hour, feeding him what little formula they could spare. He had dark eyes that seemed to look right through her, and a grip surprisingly strong for something so small. When the sun began its descent toward the jagged mountains, 2 colony security officers came for him. They walked in silence through the airlock, past the outer gates, 50 meters into the wasteland beyond, far enough that they wouldn't hear him cry. One officer, a younger man named Torres, had tears in his eyes. The other, Patterson, had the same dead expression as Garrett. They placed the infant on a flat rock, still wrapped in his blanket. The baby had stopped crying, as if he knew screaming wouldn't help. His dark eyes watched the 2 men as they backed away. "God forgive us," Torres whispered. Patterson said nothing. They returned to the colony and sealed the gates. The temperature would drop below freezing in 3 hours. The native predators would emerge with the darkness. The dust storms would return by midnight. The baby had no chance. Everyone knew it. That was the point. But the council had forgotten something. They had been so focused on their own survival that they had stopped paying attention to the other inhabitants of Drakenveld, the original inhabitants, the ones who had been here for thousands of years before humans ever looked at the stars. Vorthak had seen the human settlement grow and struggle. He had watched from his mountain eyrie with the patient curiosity of a being who had lived for 8 centuries. The soft skins were foolish and weak, building their metal boxes in territory they didn't understand. His kind had avoided them, let them be. They would die on their own soon enough. But today, as he glided on the thermal currents above the red wastes, something caught his attention. A sound, high-pitched, desperate. He angled his massive wings and descended, his shadow falling over the colony like a cloud. The infant lay on the rock, blanket fluttering in the wind. Vorthak landed nearby, his claws sinking into the sandy soil. He was enormous, scaled in deep bronze and gold, with powerful legs and wings that could blot out the sun. His head alone was larger than a human vehicle. He moved closer, lowering his head to examine the tiny creature. The baby didn't cry. Instead, those dark eyes met his, fearless, not with the foolish bravery of ignorance, but with something else, a will to survive that burned bright despite the small, fragile body. Vorthak recognized that will. He had seen it before, in the eyes of young warriors and desperate survivors. It was a spark that separated those who lived from those who merely existed. The Softskins had thrown this one away. They had deemed it worthless. They were wrong. Carefully, impossibly gently for a creature of his size, Vorthak picked up the bundle in his claws and launched himself into the darkening sky. The cave smelled of smoke and stone, and something wild that the boy would later learn was just a scent of home. Kale took his first steps on the smooth rock floor, while Vorthak watched, ready to catch him if he fell. The dragon had lined the corner of his lair with soft moss and salvaged human fabrics, creating a nest for the small creature he now called son. Again, Vorthak rumbled. The word formed carefully in the human tongue he had learned. His voice was deep like thunder in the mountains. Kale, now 3 years old, squared his tiny shoulders and repeated the draconian phrase. His pronunciation was terrible, but Vorthak's pride swelled nonetheless. The child learned faster than any hatchling he had ever known. Human minds were quick, adaptable in ways that surprised the ancient dragon. The boy grew, and the years passed like water flowing downhill. By age 7, Kale could hunt the small cliff rabbits that lived in the rocks. Vorthak had taught him to move silently, to read the wind, to understand that patience was often more valuable than speed. The boy's human hands were clever, fashioning snares and tools that even impressed his father. "Why did they leave me?" Kale asked one night, staring into fire. He had asked before many times, and Vorthak always gave the same answer: because they were afraid. Fear makes people cruel. The dragon's golden eyes reflected the flames. But their weakness gave me a son. I count this as fortune. Kale smiled at that, as he always did. But the question never fully went away. By 10, the boy had learned to fight. Draconian combat was not made for human bodies, but Vorthak adapted the ancient techniques. Where dragons used their mass and strength, Kale learned speed and precision. Where they relied on armored scales, he learned to avoid being hit at all. "You are small," Vorthak told him during training. "Humans are fragile, but you are also quick, and your kind thinks in ways mine does not. Use what you have, not what you wish you had." The boy absorbed every lesson. He learned to read body language so well that he could predict Vorthak's movements before the dragon made them. He learned the pressure points where even a small blade could drop a large opponent. He learned that survival was not about being the strongest, but about being smart enough to turn every advantage in your favor. Other Draconians sometimes visited Vorthak's territory. They viewed Kale with curiosity, suspicion, or disdain. A human child, raised as one of their own, it was unnatural. Shameful, even. "Your pet will die young," one visiting dragon named Scar9 hissed. "Humans are weak. You waste your time." Kale, 12 years old and cocky, stepped forward. "Then fight me." The challenge hung in the air. Vorthak tensed, ready to intervene, but something made him pause. Scar9 laughed, a sound like grinding boulders. "Very well, little Softskin. I will be gentle." He wasn't gentle, but he also wasn't prepared. Kale moved like wind through grass, dodging the massive claws, using Scar9's own momentum against him. When the dragon lunged, Kale wasn't there. When Scar9 turned, the boy had already circled behind. Kale couldn't hurt the armored creature, but he didn't need to. He just needed to prove he couldn't be caught. After 5 minutes, Scar9 stopped, breathing hard. "Enough. The whelp has spirit." Vorthak's chest rumbled with pride. He has more than spirit. He has adaptability. It is humanity's greatest gift. That same year, Kale encountered humans for the first time since his abandonment. 3 scavengers from a colony had ventured into the mountains, searching for salvageable metal from old survey equipment. They found Kale instead. The boy stood on a cliff ledge, dressed in clothes made from animal hide, a spear in his hand. His skin was tanned dark from the sun, his hair long and wild. He looked more like a young predator than a human child. "What the hell?" one scavenger breathed, raising his rifle. Kale spoke, his human words awkward and rusty. "You, leave this territory. Vorthak's." "It's a kid," another scavenger said. "Where are your parents?" Before Kale could answer, Vorthak landed behind him with an earth-shaking impact. The dragon's massive form unfolded like a nightmare made real, wings spreading wide, eyes blazing. Leave. The scavengers ran, stumbling over rocks in their panic. Kale watched them disappear into the distance, something hollow forming in his chest. Those were his people, his species. But looking at Vorthak beside him, he knew the truth. His father was a dragon. His home was a cave. His people had left him to die. But maybe, just maybe, that wasn't the end of his story. The distress signal reached Vorthak's territory 3 days before Kale's 18th birthday. It wasn't meant for them. The broadcast was automated, repeating endlessly across all frequencies, desperately calling for help that would never come in time. Terran Colony 7 Alpha was under attack. Kale sat at the cave entrance, the salvage radio in his hands crackling with static and fear. This is Colony 7 Alpha. We are under assault by hostile forces, requesting immediate assistance. Casualties mounting. Food stores destroyed. If anyone can hear this, please help. Vorthak settled beside his son, watching the young man's face carefully. The softskins who abandoned you now beg for aid. They're dying, Kale said quietly. They left you to die. I know. Kale's jaw tightened. But I didn't die. You saved me. Maybe that means I'm supposed to save them. The dragon was silent for a long moment. Finally, he sighed, smoke curling from his nostrils. You've always been too human and too draconian at once. It makes you foolish and noble in equal measure. Will you let me go? Vorthak closed his eyes. Letting go was harder than he had imagined. I will do more than let you go. I will come with you. The colony looked smaller than Kale expected. Or perhaps he had simply grown larger in spirit. The walls were scorched and broken in places. Bodies lay in the courtyard, covered with sheets. Survivors moved like ghosts, exhausted and hollow-eyed. When Kale walked through the damaged gates, every person stopped and stared. He was tall now, muscular, moving with a predator's grace. His clothes were a mix of hide and salvaged human fabric. Scars marked his arms and face. He looked like something from a nightmare or a legend. Who are you? A guard raised a rifle. Hand shaking. My name is Kale. I'm here to help. A woman pushed through the crowd. Commander Reeves, older now, her face lined with stress and sleepless nights. She studied Kale with sharp eyes, then looked past him to where Vorthak waited beyond the walls, massive and impossible to ignore. I know you, she said slowly. Or I know what you are, the abandoned baby. Some of the old-timers still talk about it. Her voice was bitter. We threw you away and you come back to help? Why? Kale met her gaze. Because it's the right thing to do. We don't need help from savages and monsters, someone shouted from the crowd. Vorthak's growl shook the ground. Kale raised a hand, calming his father with a gesture. You're being attacked by the Karthek swarm. They're insectoid raiders. They strip planets of resources and food. Your weapons are designed for human targets, not armor hive creatures. He paused. I know how they hunt. I know their patterns. And I know how to kill them. Commander Reeves wanted to refuse. Pride demanded it. But pride didn't feed hungry children or protect damaged walls. What do you want in return? Nothing. Kale's voice was firm. But we don't have time to argue. They'll attack again at sunset. That's when the swarm is strongest. The commander made her decision. Fine, but your dragon stays outside the walls. His name is Vorthak. He's my father, and he stays where I stay. For 3 days, Kale worked alongside the colonists. He showed them how to create barriers using the swarm's own territorial instincts against them. He taught them to fight in groups, covering each other's weaknesses. He identified the colony's most defensible positions using principles Vorthak had taught him about mountain fortress design. The colonists watched him with mixed emotions. Some saw a freak, something unnatural. Others saw hope in human form. Dr. Chun, now elderly and fragile, wept when she saw him alive. I held you, she whispered. I didn't want him to leave you. I know, Kale said gently. It wasn't your choice. A young girl named Maya, maybe 7 years old, approached him without fear. Are you really half-dragon? Kale smiled. No, I'm all human, but I was raised by someone better than most humans I've met. Is he scary? Sometimes, but he's also kind. He taught me that strength without honor is just cruelty. Maya considered this seriously. I wish I had a dragon dad. Maybe someday you'll meet him properly. On the third evening, as the sun began to set, the warning alarm screamed. The swarm was coming, and this time they came in numbers that darkened the sky. Kale stood on the walls, a salvage rifle in his hands. Colonists on either side of him. Commander Reeves stood nearby, her own weapon ready. Any last wisdom from your dragon father? Kale's smile was sharp. Yes, when the enemy thinks they've won, that's when you show them they were wrong. The swarm descended like a living nightmare, and the battle for survival began. The Karthex came like a black wave across the red desert, thousands of chittering insectoid bodies moving as one. They were the size of large dogs, with razor mandibles and armor plating that shrugged off small arms fire. Their hive mind made them efficient killers, coordinating attacks with terrifying precision. Kale fired in controlled bursts. Each shot aimed at the joints where armor didn't protect. Aim for the legs. Slow them down. His voice carried across the wall, and colonists adjusted their fire. The first wave hit the outer barriers Kale had designed. Sharpened poles angled outward, coated with chemical irritants that confused the swarm scent tracking. The creatures faltered, their coordination breaking for precious seconds. It was enough. The colonists poured fire into the confused mass. But the swarm was endless. For every 10 that fell, 20 more climbed over their corpses. East wall is breaching, someone screamed. Kale was already moving. He leaped from the rampart, rolled, and came up running. 3 Karthex had broken through a damaged section. Colonists scattered in panic. Kale didn't have time to reload. He dropped the rifle and drew the blade Vorthak had forged for him. Metal heated in dragon fire until it was harder than anything humans could make. The first creature lunged. Kale sidestepped, his blade finding the gap between head and thorax. The Karthex collapsed, twitching. The second attacked from his blind spot, but Kale had been trained by a dragon who could strike from any angle. He ducked, spun, and drove his blade upward through the softer underside. The third Karthex was smarter. It circled, waiting for an opening. Kale breathed steadily, remembering Vorthak's lessons. Patience. Read the opponent. Wait for the moment. The creature feinted left, then attacked right. Kale was ready. He caught the mandibles with his blade, twisted, and used the creature's momentum to flip it onto its back. His boot came down on its exposed throat with lethal force. The colonists who had scattered now stared at him with new eyes. He fought like nothing they had ever seen, human speed combined with alien technique. Back to your positions. Kale shouted. They obeyed without question now. The battle raged for hours. The colony's ammunition was running low. Bodies lay in the courtyard, both human and Karthex. Commander Reeves fought beside her people. Her face streaked with blood and dust. She was limping from a wound she refused to acknowledge. "We can't hold much longer," she gasped, reloading her last magazine. Kale looked at the horizon. The swarm was regrouping for another assault, this one larger than all the others combined. The colony would fall. Everyone knew it. "Vorthak," Kale whispered into the wind. "I need you." The answer came as a roar that split the sky. Vorthak rose from beyond the mountains, and he had not come alone. 5 other Draconians flew beside him, their wings catching the dying sunlight. They were ancient, powerful, and terrifying. The swarm hesitated, their hive mind processing this new threat. The hesitation cost them everything. The dragons fell upon the Karthex like the wrath of ancient gods. Vorthak's fire turned sand to glass, incinerating hundreds of creatures in seconds. The other Draconians tore through the swarm with claws that could rend metal. Their roar shattered the hive mind's coordination, sending the insects into confused chaos. Kale watched his father fight with fierce pride. This was what Draconians were, what humans had never truly understood. Not monsters, but warriors with honor, who protected those they claimed as their own. The tide turned. The colonists rallied, pushing forward with renewed hope. Together, humans and dragons destroyed the swarm. But the Kearthek's queen, massive and cunning, had waited in the rear. She saw Commander Reeves separated from her squad, wounded and vulnerable. The queen was 3 times the size of her warriors, her armor nearly impenetrable. She charged. Kale saw it happening as if in slow motion. Reeves turned, tried to raise her empty weapon. The queen's mandibles opened wide. Kale ran faster than he ever had, human legs pushing beyond their limits. He slammed into Reeves, knocking her clear. The queen's mandibles closed on Kale instead, piercing through his side, lifting him off the ground. Pain exploded through his body. Blood ran hot down his leg. Vorthak's roar was pure anguish and rage. The dragon moved like lightning, covering the distance in a heartbeat. His claws caught the queen's head and simply tore from her body. Kale fell, Vorthak catching him gently before he hit the ground. "No, no, my son." The dragon's voice broke. Kale's vision swam. "Did we win?" "Yes." Vorthak's massive head lowered, touching Kale's forehead gently. "You won." The last of the swarm fled into the desert. The battle was over. But as darkness took Kale, he didn't know if he would live to see the peace he had fought for. Kale woke to the sound of voices arguing. Human voices mixed with the deeper rumble of draconian speech. His side burned with pain, but he was alive. Slowly, his eyes opened to find himself in the colony's medical bay, surrounded by equipment that beeped and hummed. Dr. Chin sat beside his bed, older and frielier than he remembered from days ago. Or had it been days? Time felt slippery. "You're awake," she said softly, relief flooding her wrinkled face. "We didn't think you'd make it. But your father, he brought something. A draconian healing compound. We mixed it with our medicine, and it worked. You've been unconscious for 6 days." Kale tried to sit up. Pain lanced through him, and he gasped. "Easy." Dr. Chin pressed him back down. "Your wounds are healing, but you nearly died. That creature's mandibles punctured your liver and cracked 2 ribs. Vorthak." Kale's voice was rough. "Outside. He hasn't left the colony gates since the battle. Won't let anyone make him." She smiled slightly. Turns out dragons are very stubborn about their children. Over the next 2 weeks, Kale healed. The colony had changed in ways that went deeper than the repaired walls and clean courtyards. People looked at him differently now, not with suspicion or fear, but with respect, with gratitude. Commander Reeves visited on the 10th day. She walked with cane now, her own wounds still mending. She stood at the foot of his bed for a long moment, just looking at him. "I owe you my life," she finally said. "You don't owe me anything." "Yes, I do. And so does this colony." She took a deep breath. 18 years ago, I was on the council. I voted to leave you outside those walls. I told myself it was necessary, that we had no choice." Her voice cracked. "I was wrong. We were all wrong. And you came back anyway. You saved us anyway." Kale met her eyes. "I didn't do it for forgiveness." "I know. That's what makes it matter." Reeves straightened, becoming the commander again. "When you're healed, the colony wants to offer you full citizenship. A home here. A place with your people." "My people," Kale repeated quietly. "I don't know what that means anymore. Maybe you get to decide." When Kale finally walked outside, leaning on a crutch, the colony had gathered. Vorthak waited beyond the gates, his golden eyes brightening when he saw his son alive and moving. Kale limped toward him, and the dragon lowered his massive head. "You scared me, little one," Vorthak rumbled. "I'm not so little anymore. You will always be little to me." The dragon's voice held gentle humor. "What will you do now? The Softskins offer you a place with them." Kale looked back at the colony, then at his father. "I've been thinking about that. All my life, I felt like I had to choose. Human or draconian. But I'm both. And maybe that's not a problem. Maybe that's the answer." "Explain." "Humans and draconians have lived on this planet separately for years. You ignore each other, or worse. But we fought together. We won together. What if that didn't have to end?" Vorthak considered this, his ancient mind turning over the possibility. "You wish to be a bridge." "Yes, an ambassador. Someone who knows both worlds and can help them understand each other." The dragon was quiet for so long that Kale worried he had offended him. Then Vorthak's chest rumbled with what might have been laughter. "My son, always seeing possibilities where others see only walls. Very well, I support this, but know that it will not be easy. My kind are proud and stubborn. So are humans," Kale grinned. "I learned from the best of both." The following months transformed the colony. Kale established a trading post where humans and Draconians could exchange goods. Human technology for Draconian knowledge of the planet. Medical supplies for mineral deposits. Stories for stories. Young Maya was the first human child brave enough to approach Vorthak. She stood before the massive dragon, tiny and fearless, and asked, "Can you teach me to be brave like Kale?" Vorthak had looked at Kale, who nodded encouragement. Bravery is not the absence of fear, small one. It is doing what must be done despite the fear. But yes, I can teach you. More children came, some human. Eventually, some young Draconians curious about the softskins who had fought beside their elders. Kale taught them together, building something new from two old cultures. On the anniversary of the battle, Kale stood between Commander Reeves and Vorthak, watching human and Draconian children practice together in the training yard. A hybrid school teaching both species. "Look at what we built," Reeves said quietly. Kale smiled. "Look at what we're building. This is just the beginning." Vorthak rumbled his agreement. "They abandoned you to die, my son. But in their cruelty, they gave the universe something better. They gave it you, a bridge, a teacher, a future." Kale watched a human girl help a young Draconian with his stance, both laughing at shared mistakes. Family wasn't about blood or species. It was about choice, about love, about standing together when it mattered most. They had abandoned him, but he had returned anyway. And in doing so, he had shown both humans and Draconians that their greatest strength came not from standing apart, but from standing together. The colony had called him a burden once. Now they called him family. And that made all the difference.